Okay, so here we go, Daf Mem Amud Base, and we're going on the latter part of the Mishnah, which says Al Kulon Im Ama Shekol Yineh B'Dvara Yuyotzi. When you say Shakol, you yotzi on all of the brachas. Now the question is, does that mean all the brachas, or does it mean most of the brachas? So we're going to have a machloikis, Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan. What's with Hamoitzi and Boyer Preagafen? They are very special brachas, and Rashi points out that these brachas are so powerful that they cause many things to revolve around them, like Kiddush and Havdalah. And as a result, Kiddush, Havdalah, Sheva brachas, they have a real chashivas. Can you use a shakel for them? And we have Itmar introducing us to Machlekes Amoraim. Rav Huna Amar Chutz Min HaPas U'Min HaYayin. Rav Huna is very adamant, and he says no, you cannot say shakel when it comes to Hamoitzi and Preagafen. And Rabbi Yochanan argues, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Afilu Pas V'Yayin. He says even bread and wine you can say a shakel. If you say shakel, I beg your pardon, it will work. Part of the Gemara, name it Ketanoi. Let us suggest the machlokes between Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan is in fact echoed in the words of the Tanoim. Whenever the Gemara asks us kasha, it is a problem, because were it to be that the Amoraim are duplicating a machlokes of the Tanoim, they should merely have stated halacha karebi ploni and not initiated a new machlokes if it's simply a duplicate of a pre-existing machlokes. And therefore, name a kitnai is always a kasha. It comes out that these are just two pre-existing opinions, and that can't be, because every Amora really needs to justify himself according to both Tanoim. The normal format, the way the Gemara works, is after a name Ketnai, each Amor will defend himself to demonstrate how he could actually fit into both of those opinions, and their machlokes is something very different, which is exactly what's going to happen right over here. Name Ketnai. Ra'a pas, a man saw a piece of bread. Very interesting way of introducing us to the idea. Ra'a pas, you saw a bread. Va'amar, and you said about this bread, Kama noa pas zu, how beautiful is this loaf of bread. Baruch hamokim shebara, blessed is the Hamokim is an expression that's used to refer to Hashem, and it means He's the space, which is a very powerful, profound, and mystical idea that Hashem contains the world doesn't contain Hashem. Baruch HaMokim Shebara, blessed is the Mokim that created this piece of bread, and then he ate the bread. Yotza, he has fulfilled his obligation of making Hamoitzi Lechem Min Haaretz, even with this format of bracha. Ra'atena v'amar, he saw a fig and he said, Kamana'atena zu, Baruch HaMokim Shebara, how beautiful is this fig, blessed is the Mokim that made it. Yotza, Diva Rabbi Meir, this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Kol HaMeshanim Me'matbei Shetavu Chachamim, any person that deviates from the format that established literally the mint that minted Chachamim, like you mint a coin, the specific way of saying the bracha that the Chachamim established. If you deviate from the particular nusach of the bracha that the Chachamim established, but brachos, in regard to brachos, lo yotze idei chavoso, you do not fulfill your obligation, and therefore a person that saw this fig or this bread, Rabbi Yossi counters, he goes against Rabbi Meir and says, you're not Yotzi. Now the Gemara says, Neima, Rav Huna da'amar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yochanan da'amar Rabbi Meir. Let us say that Rav Huna follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, that says you need to be very specific about brachas, and Rabbi Meir, and so Rabbi Yochanan follows the opinion of Rabbi Meir that as long as you get the general idea across, that's okay. And that's why Rabbi Yochanan would say it's okay to say shakel on instead of hamoisi on both bread and wine, and whereas Rav Huna would say not. The Gemara and that's part 2, saying that the machlokes is a machlokes Tanoim. In part 3, we have a resolution, each one defending how he could go like both Tanoim. Amalach Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, I could even agree to Rabbi Meir. Ad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Meir hasam elahecha deka'amad keshmei de pas. Until what point did Rabbi Meir say you are Yotzi over there? Until the point that you mentioned the idea of bread. But had you not mentioned the actual notion of bread in your bracha, you can say it in any way, but you have to say what you're making a bracha on. Rabbi Meir would agree that if you don't mention bread, you won't be yotzi, and therefore if you said shakol instead of amotzi, you're not yotzi. And that's how Rav Huna would defend himself, that he could go like both opinions. And of course, Rabbi Yossi is even more simple, that if you say the wrong nusach, you're not yotzi. And in part 4, Rabbi Yochanan defends himself. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Loch Anod Amri Afilu Rabbi Yossi. I could even fit into Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Ad kan loika Amar Rabbi Yossi Hasam Elo. Until what point did Rabbi Yossi say you are not yotzi there? Mishum dekama bracha deloita kin rabbanan. The reason why I argued on Rabbi Meir is because you made up a new nusach bracha, a new way of saying brachas. But if you used a pre-existing nusach, even if you used it for the wrong thing, to takin rabbanan, that the rabbanan established, I feel Rabbi Yossi moide. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yossi, if you said shakel, which is a legitimate bracha, even though you used it for amoiti, that's okay. He just didn't want you to make up new ways of saying brachas. If you say the old ways that the chacham established, you can use shakel on amoiti, and it works. And that kind of sums up the machlokes. Some things to notice: you see this classic format of a name, a ketnai, and then each Amorai defend himself. When the Amoraim defend themselves, they'll use this expression, ad kan lo kama ela. This is the span of where their opinion went, and this will allow them to justify how they can fit into both opinions in the Mishnah. And now we go on to part 5 of the sugya, which is a story about a shepherd called Binyamin. Binyamin Raya Korach Rifta, he wrapped his bread. Remember, they were big lafot. V'amar, and he said, when he'd finished eating, as benching, Brich Morei Dahai Pita, blessed the master of this bread. In other words, another example of using a equivalent to the established format of brachas, the established nusach. Amar Rav, and Rav says in regard to this activity that Binyamin Raya did, Yotza, that's enough. Part 2 of the Gemara is a kasha. V'amar Rav called bracha she'en b'has karas Hashem ein a bracha. Didn't Rav say any bracha that doesn't have a mentioning of Hashem's name, saying the name of Hashem, the name of Adnus Yud Kei Vav Kei is not a bracha? Answers the Gemara, Da'amar Teres, Da'amar Brich Rachmana Maridai Pita. He added in the words Rachmana, the merciful one, which is the name of Hashem, and it doesn't have to literally be the name of Hashem. The Shem Adnus or the Shem Avayat can even be a substitution. The merciful one, any other of the names of Hashem will do the job. Brich Rachmana Dai Pita. Blessed is the merciful one of this Pita. The Gemara part 4 asks for Aboyin Shalish brachas. You need all 3 brachas for benching. There are 3 brachas which are chayv in deraisa. The first bracha is on food, the second on the land, and the third on Yerushalayim. And he only said one of those 3. The Gemara answers in part 5, Ma yotza dekama Rav nami yotza yedei bracha Yerushalayim. When Rav said Ma yotza dekama Rav, I don't know how to put the comma. I'm going to put. I don't know if you put the comma before or after the nami, which means also. Do you read it Ma yotza dekama Rav nami yotza dei bracha Yerushalayim, or do you read it Ma yotza dekama Rav nami yotza dei bracha Yerushalayim? I would say the comma goes before the nami and not afterwards. When Rav said yotza, he also meant be the first of the 3 brachas. Of course, this shepherd Binyamin would have to say another 2 brachas, and he could say them in any way as long as he captured the theme. In part 6, Ma'iko Mashmalon. So the Gemara says, well, if that's true, what is the chiddush? Is the chiddush afal gav do amr beloshen chayil? Is the chiddush to tell me that you can say a bracha in a mundane language, not in lashon hakodesh? You can use other languages to bench in. Tanina, we've already learned that in a Mishnah. These are the things which are said in any language. Parasha Soita, when a woman goes up, she's suspected of being unfaithful to her husband, and there is an entire process that you go through, and you can do that process. The oath that she makes can be said, the oath that the Kohen gets her to make, that she has to swear that she was not with a man, that can be said in any language. Vidoi Meiser, once a person after the Shemitah cycle is divided up into 2 parts, the first 3 years, the second 3 years, and then the last of those years is called the Shemitah. At the end of each of those first 3-year periods, if there's any Maisa that you have not yet given out, you have to bring it to Beis HaMikdash and make a declaration called Vidu Maisa, a confession to the fact that you've done your due diligence in terms of Maisa. That's kind of the cutoff point, and that's called Vidu Maisa. Kriyas Shema, you can say Kriyas Shema in any language. Utfila, you can daven in any language. Ubekas Hamazon, and you can say blessing after meals in any language. And therefore, what was the big chiddush over here that this shepherd benched in Aramaic? The Gemara answers in part 7, Itzrich. No, it is required. This is a chiddush. So I would have thought I would thought, when can you fulfill the mitzvah of saying it in a foreign tongue when you said what the English words, for example, of what the Hebrew words said? Aval loy amrei b'lashon chol ki echad atkin rabbanon b'lashon kodesh. But if you did not say it in a foreign tongue, the way that the Rabbanan established it in Lashon HaKodesh, I would say you don't fulfill the obligation. Kumash Milan, the Chidush of Rav is, not only can you deviate from the prescribed language, you don't have to say in Hebrew, you can even say a different theme, a different format on the same theme, and that will allow you to be yotzi, and that draws to a close our first sugya on Daf Mem Amud Base. Second sugya, Gufa, back to the body of the matter in order to expand upon it. Crucial, critical, Talmudic key phrase. Gufa, Amar Rav, Kol Bracha, She'ein Bo Haskaras Hashem, Ein a Bracha. Any bracha that doesn't have in it the mentioning of Hashem's name is not considered a bracha. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Kol Bracha, She'ein Bo Malchus, Ein a Bracha. Not only do you need to say the name of Hashem, you also need to say Melech HaOlam. You need Malchus, you need kingship. That is the machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara says, Amar Abaye, part 2, Kavas de Rav Mistarva. It follows the reasoning of Rav that you only need Hashem's name and not Malchus. Why? Tisani, we learned in a brisa. Lo avarti mitzvah yisecho. So this is in regard to Vidu Maisros, and you've declared all the things that you've done the right thing, and you've separated your Trumas and Maisros, and now you've come and you haven't eaten it in a time when you're in mourning, and then you add on to after that declaration, Lo avarti mitzvah yisecho. I did not transgress your mitzvahs. V'lo shochachti, and I did not forget. So what are these two things referring to? Says the Brisa, Lo avarti means I didn't transgress milevarechecha, that when I separated the Trumas and the Maisros, I made a bracha, Asher ki yishanu mitzvah yisrael v'tzivon la'afresh Trumas and Maisros. So I made a bracha. V'lo shochachti milahazkir shimcha, and the second lo shochachti means, and I didn't, when I made that bracha, I didn't omit your name. So you see, v'ilu malchus lo katanya, it doesn't say I didn't forget to mention your name and your kingship. So we see a proof to Rav against Rabbi Yochanan. Part 3 of the Sukkah says V'ilu Malchus Lo Katanya, and doesn't mention anything about kingship. Rabbi Yochanan, but Rabbi Yochanan will retort by saying, Tani, you should really learn, this is how it was taught. V'lo shechachti milhazke shimcha u'malchusacha alav. It doesn't only say that I forgot to mention your name, it says I didn't forget. So I didn't forget to mention your name, and I didn't forget to mention your kingship, and therefore the way that Rabbi Yochanan and the Brisa is, it includes both, and it's not a kasha on him. How could Rabbi Yochanan simply adjust the format of the Brisa and add in these words? That is a mystery that you have to figure out in terms of how much leeway do the Chachamim have in interpolating words into the Mishnayos and Brises, and over here it's not even a Hachi Ka'amar. It seems to be that Rabbi Yochanan, when he learned this Brisa, had this Gersa available to him, and he held that the Gersa that was quoted by Abaye was simply a wrong Gersa. That's what it appears from our Gemara as we launch into the Mishnah. The Mishnah begins, that says that if there's something which does not grow from the ground, you should make a sheh hakol. Now we give lists of things which are going to be a dispute between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda. What about al hachometz, vinegar, which is wine that's gone sour? Which you'll soon see is some kind of compromised fruit. And on locusts. The Tanna Kama says, even on those, you still say shakol. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees on the last 3, and he says, Kol shemin klola, anything which is a species of curse, which wine, which turns to vinegar, broken fruit and locusts, which tend to eat crops, those are cursed things. And mevarchin olav, you do not make a bracha on them, you eat them without a bracha. That is the machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim. In the second part of the Mishnah goes into hayo lefagav minim harbe. You had many different species in front of you. Rabbi Yehuda Omer im yesh b'nei min shiva. If it's one of the 7 species is amongst the fruits in front of you, olav u'mevarich, you should make the bracha on that. The Chachamim and the Chachamim say you can choose which one you want to make a bracha on. The Gemara will expand upon exactly what the parameters of this law are as we go into the Brisa in the Gemara. Tanya Banan, part 1 of our Gemara. Al Davish and Gidulim in the Aretz. And now the Gemara gives more examples. What is called ein gedulim in the aretz that doesn't grow from the ground? Kugoin, for example, basar behemois, chayas v'oifes, the flesh of animals, wild animals, and fowl. V'dogim, and fish. So on the flesh of any living creature you say shakol. Al cholov v'al habeitzim v'al gvina. What about dairy products? On milk, eggs, and cheese, you should say shakol. What about things which have become rancid? Ala pas she'afsha, on a bread which has gone moldy, vala yain shikrim, and wine which has a film that's formed over its surface, vala tavshil she'ava turasa, and a cooked dish that no longer has its initial form. Omer shakol, you should say shakol. It's interesting, obviously these 3 last categories, there's not dangerous to eat them, or there's some joy in eating them, because if there's no joy in eating them, so then obviously you do not make a bracha, you need to have the pleasure. So it's hard for me to imagine why moldy bread would be gishmak to eat, but if you happen to enjoy it, so then you do make a shakol. Ala melech v'al zamis, on salt and salt water, v'al kmeim u'pitres, and on different kinds of mushrooms, fungus, omer shakol, you also say shakol. The Gemara in part 2 asks a kasha, l'meim kmeim u'pitres lav gedule karke ninu. Are you suggesting, says the Gemara, that all kinds of fungus, different types of mushrooms are not considered that they grow in the ground? Vatanya, we learned in the Brisa, a person makes an oath, hanoidimi peres haaretz, that he prohibits himself the fruit of the ground. Also beperes haaretz, he can't eat the fruits of the ground. Umuta b'kameim u'pitres, but he's permitted to eat mushrooms. V'im amar kol gidulei karka, but if he says anything that grows from the ground, Allah is forbidden to me, also then he's forbidden to eat mushrooms. So you see, mushrooms are considered something which grow from the ground, and how can our Mishnah and the Brisa say otherwise? Amar Abai, to resolve this contradiction in part 3, they certainly increase from the ground because they feed off the moisture, says Rashi, in the ground. Minki lo yanki, however, they do not nurture themselves from the ground. Minki lo yanki mara. The Gemara says in part 4, V'hal kol davar she'en giduloi min aretz ketanim. But it says on something which doesn't grow from the ground, and since they are kind of increased by being close to the surface of the ground, that's called that they grow from the ground, and we haven't resolved anything. So the Gemara says, Tani, you should teach al davar she'ein yonek min aretz. Again, it seems to be that there's a different gear. So it doesn't say hachi ketani. It doesn't look like it's a logic language override. It means no, you simply made an error, and it should say al davar she'ein yonek min aretz. What don't you make a boyer priya adam on? Something which is not sustained from the ground, and mushrooms aren't sustained from the ground. They simply grow in the ground, and that is the adjustment made to both our Brisa and the Mishnah. Now let's go into what novlos are. What are these things called novlos? My novlos, the Gemara begins with an information question. Reb Zera answers, Reb Eloi answers. One says, Chad Amar Bushli Kimra, burnt dates. Burnt means bushli means burnt, kimra means by the heat, and we know they're referring to dates. V'chad Omar Tamari Dezika. The other one says dates of the wind. They mean they're blown off the tree. Part 3 of the Gemara is Tnan. We learned in a Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Kol shehu min klala ein mevarchin olav. in regard to noivles, this is when Rabbi Yehuda said his statement, if it's a species of curse, you don't make a bracha on it. So now, Bi Shleima, that all works well and good, Leman Dama Bushli Kimra, that says it's burnt by the heat dates, that's mamash, a klola, hainu dekorile, min klola, that's why we call it a min klola, a kind of curse. Leman Dama Tamari Zika, but according to the opinion that says, noivles are simply the dates that have been blown off by the wind, min klola, why is it considered a curse? The dates are great dates, they just got blown off by the wind and they landed on the ground. The Gemara answers in part 4, Ash'ara. You're right, those aren't a kind of species of fruit. And when Rabbi Yehuda says anything which is a species of fruit, he was only referring to the locust and the vinegar and not to the noivles. There's another version of the sugya, and this is going to be part 5. Iked Amri, there's another version of the sugya. Bishleim Lamand Amar Bushli Kimra. I can understand well and good the opinion that says Bushli Kimra. Hanu de Mavarchim Alayhu Shakoil. That's why you'd make Shakoil. According to this is going now, the Kasha instead of being on Rabbi Yehuda is going on the Tanakama. Elo Lamand Amar Tamari Dazika. But according to the opinion who says they are blown off dates, Shakoil. Why would you say Shakoil? Boy is what you should be required to bracha. In other words, in the second version, instead of using the Rabbi Yehuda as a way of asking a kasha on the Mandrama Tamari Dazika, we use the Tana Kama. So as a result, this really knocks out that opinion that says that it's wind-cast dates, and we now decide that actually everyone agrees. Ella part 6, if it says the word noivles and it doesn't say anything more, everyone agrees to Bushli Kimra Linu. Everyone agrees that those are burnt dates, and that would be the topic of our Mishnah, and therefore we retract from what we said above. Ki pligi, where do they argue but noivles tomorrow? When it says attached to the words noivles, it adds in the word date, disnan, and we get this from a Mishnah in Demai. As it says, now what is Demai? Demai is the produce of people who are not learned, and the Chachamim made a gzeira that you cannot assume that maestros and trumas have been taken, and therefore you have to take over again maestros. So there are certain fruits, however, that you don't have to worry about it, and these are called akalin sh'demai. They're the lenient ones because these fruits are so not important. The Amoratim would be more than happy to give maestro from them. They wouldn't hold back because they're really quite worthless fruits, or not great fruits. And what are they? And the Gemara will explain what these things are. Hashitin, v'harimin, v'uzredin. So the first 3 categories are shitin, rimin, uzredin. Benois shuach, ubenois shikma. Those are the v'gufnin. Those are the next 3. V'nitzpa we already know is a caper bush. V'noivles tomorrow, and there we haven't mentioned that's going to be very relevant for us. Aviyat says noivles, and it adds on the word tomorrow. So this is the Brachos. The Gemara is going to interject, and this is going to be parenthetical. So I'm not going to count this as a second part. No, sorry, as another part, because already all over here we've got 6 parts, and this is going to be part of part 6. The Gemara says, Shitin, Amar Rabba Bar Bachana, Amar Birchen Min Ta'anim. So Shitin is a kind of fig. Rimin, Kandi. Rimi is something called Kandi, which is another kind of fruit. I don't know what it is. The Uzredin are Tulshi. So if you know Tulshi, that's going to help you. Benois Shuach, Amar Rabba Bar Bachana, Birchen Ta'ani Chivita, white figs. Benois Shikma, Amar Rabba Bar Bachana, Amar Birchen, those are Duvli. Gufnin, Shili Gufni. So Gufni are the really like the last late grapes. Nitzpa, the caper bush purcha, with that's another synonym for the caper bush. Noiv lois tomorrow. Now we get into noiv tomorrow, which is really why we came here. Rebbe loy v'Rebbe Zera. Chad Omar Bushli Kimra. One of them says Bushli Kimra. Chad Omar Tamari Dazvika. One says wind-cast dates. Bishlam Lamand Omar Bushli Kimra. According to the opinion that says they are burnt up dates. Hani Diktani Hakalim Shavnai. That's why a person would be lenient on these, and you wouldn't have to worry. They would be lenient because who would want to take? Who would resist from taking ma'aser because they're so low-grade fruits? And also, furthermore, she says Sveikan also, because the ma is a sofek, so Sveikan the part of Adarin Chayev. But you know, if you say that they are Bushli Kimra, so that means we understand that these are as demai. they are exempt from Maisa. But if you know for sure Maisa hasn't been taken, Jafka because they demai. If you know as a fact that Maisa hasn't yet been taken, so then you'll be liable to take Maisa because they're in the possession of the farmer. But the one that says they're wind cast dates, which means they've been blown far away from the tree, it means the implication of our Mishnah is if they demai, then you don't have to take Maisa. But if we know they're not Demai, you do have to take Maisa. But one second, if that wind cost dates, they're Hefka, and there's no din Maisa in Hefka. But if you say Tamari Dazika Vadan Chayev, Hefkeirin Inuhu, why would they be, if they were certain, why would they be Chayev? Even if you know for sure no Maisa has been taken, they'll be Hefka, because they are not owned by anyone. The Gemara in part 7 says, Hocha b'mayaskinan. What are we dealing with over here? Where the person who collected these dates made a pile of them. That Rabbi Yitzchak in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak says, Haleket v'ashikra v'apeh. If a person, an ani, a poor person, took his things that he collected from the field of a rich man, that he's liable because they forgot there, or because there was a corner that's left over for the poor people, and he then went and he made them into a pile, he made them into like a miniature harvest, they have to then take mice from them. Rashi points out this is only a rabbinical decree because a person would think that he's actually acquired the earth and the land, and therefore that's why it's done. Nevertheless, you see that these fallen dates, if they are then piled up, they would be liable in Maisa, and therefore that would solve the kasha asked according to the opinion of Tmorei Tezika. There's another version. It's the other way around now. It all works out beautifully according to the opinion that says that wind cast dates 100 tomorrow. It makes sense why over here we say the words Noivlos tomorrow, yet in the Mishnah we said the words Noivlos, that explains that they are distinct. But if you say that Noivlos and Noivlos tomorrow both mean the same thing, tomorrow, it should say by both of them, either Noivlos tomorrow, or Noivlos tama, or it should say just Noivlos. So why do you change the language? And the Gemara says kasha, it lands off with an unresolved kasha, teaching us the crucial lesson is you don't have to answer questions, you have to ask them kasha. The Gemara doesn't answer it. Why does the Gemara answer it? Because the Gemara realizes an unanswered kasha is an engine, a dynamo that promotes curiosity. The best thing you could have. See you soon.